Please like the video and share it so that it reaches many more people and you get sawaba, or rewards from Allah. This could be a sawabe jariyah or continuous reward for you long after you are gone.
Volume 7, Book 62, number 119. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. I had been eager to ask Umar bin al-Khattab about the two ladies from among the wives of the Prophet regarding whom Allah said, "If you two, wives of the Prophet, namely Aisha and Hafsa, turn in repentance to Allah, your hearts are indeed so inclined to oppose what the Prophet likes." 66.4, till Umar performed the Hajj and I too performed the Hajj along with him. On the way, Umar went aside to answer the call of nature. And I also went aside along with him carrying a tumbler full of water, and when Umar had finished answering the call of nature, I poured water over his hands and he performed the ablution. Then I said to him, "O chief of the believers, who were the two ladies from among the wives of the Prophet regarding whom Allah said, 'If you two, wives of the Prophet, turn in repentance to Allah, your hearts are indeed so inclined to oppose what the Prophet likes.'" 66.4. He said, "I am astonished at your question, O Ibn Abbas. They were Aisha and Hafsa." Then Umar went on narrating the Hadith, and said, "I and an Ansari neighbor of mine from Bani Umayyah bin Zaid, who used to live in Awali al-Madinah, used to visit the Prophet in turn. He used to go one day and I another day. When I went, I would bring him the news of what had happened that day regarding the divine inspiration and other things, and when he went, he used to do the same for me. We, the people of Quraysh, used to have the upper hand over our wives, but when we came to the answer, we found that their women had the upper hand over their men, so our women also started learning the ways of the Ansari women. I shouted at my wife and she retorted against me, and I disliked that she should answer me back. She said to me, "Why are you so surprised at my answering you back? By Allah, the wives of the Prophet answer him back. And some of them may leave, does not speak to him throughout the day till the night." The talk scared me and I said to her, "Whoever has done so will be ruined." Then I proceeded after dressing myself and entered upon Hafsa and said to her, "Does any one of you keep the Prophet angry till night?" She said, "Yes." I said, "You are a ruined, losing person. Don't you fear that Allah may get angry for the anger of Allah's apostle? And thus you will be ruined. So do not ask more from the Prophet and do not answer him back and do not give up talking to him. Ask me whatever you need and do not be tempted to imitate your neighbor, i.e., Aisha, in her manners. For she is more charming than you and more beloved to the Prophet." Umar added, "At that time a talk was circulating among us that the tribe of Ghassan were preparing their horses to invade us. My Ansari companion, on the day of his turn, went to the town, and returned to us at night and knocked at my door violently and asked if I was there. I became horrified and came out to him. He said, 'Today a great thing has happened.' I asked, 'What is it? Have the people of Ghassan come?' He said, 'No, but what has happened is greater and more horrifying than that. Allah's apostle has divorced his wives.' Umar added, 'The Prophet kept away from his wives,' and I said, 'Hafsa is a ruined loser.' I had already thought that most probably this divorce would happen in the near future. So I dressed myself and offered the morning prayer with the Prophet, and then the Prophet entered an upper room and stayed there in seclusion. I entered upon Hafsa and saw her weeping. I asked, "What makes you weep? Did I not warn you about that? Did the Prophet divorce you all?" She said, "I do not know." There he is retired alone in the upper room. I came out and sat near the pulpit, and saw a group of people sitting around it, and some of them were weeping. I sat with them for a while but could not endure the situation, so I went to the upper room where the Prophet was and said to a black slave of his, "Will you get the permission of the Prophet for Umar to enter?" The slave went in, talked to the Prophet about it, and then returned saying, "I have spoken to the Prophet and mentioned you, but he kept quiet." Then I returned and sat with the group of people sitting near the pulpit. But I could not bear the situation, and once again I said to the slave, "Will you get the permission for Umar?" He went in and returned saying, "I mentioned you to him, but he kept quiet." So I returned again and sat with the group of people sitting near the pulpit, but I could not bear the situation. And so I went to the slave and said, "Will you get the permission for Umar?" He went in and returned to me saying, "I mentioned you to him, but he kept quiet." When I was leaving, behold, the slave called me, saying, "The Prophet has given you permission." Then I entered upon Allah's apostle and saw him lying on a bed made of stalks of date palm leaves, and there was no bedding between it and him. The stalks left marks on his side, and he was leaning on a leather pillow stuffed with date palm fires. I greeted him, and while still standing I said, "O Allah's apostle, have you divorced your wives?" He looked at me and said, "No." I said, "Allah Akbar." And then, while still standing, I said, chatting, "Will you heed what I say, O Allah's apostle? We, the people of Quraysh, used to have power over our women. But when we arrived at Medina, we found that the men here were overpowered by their women." The Prophet smiled, and then I said to him, "Will you heed what I say, O Allah's apostle?" I entered upon Hafsa and said to her, "Do not be tempted to imitate your companion, Aisha, for she is more charming than you and more beloved to the Prophet." The Prophet smiled for a second time. When I saw him smiling, I sat down. Then I looked around his house, and by Allah, I could not see anything of importance in his house except 3 hides, so I said, "O Allah's apostle, invoke Allah to make your followers rich. For the Persians and the Romans have been made prosperous, and they have been given the pleasures of the world, although they do not worship Allah." Thereupon the Prophet sat up as he was reclining, and said, "Are you of such an opinion, O the son of Al-Khattab? These are the people who have received the rewards for their good deeds in this world." I said, "O Allah's apostle, ask Allah to forgive me." Then the Prophet kept away from his wives for 29 days because of the story which Hafsa had disclosed to Aisha. The Prophet had said, "I will not enter upon him, my wives, for 1 month," because of his anger towards them, when Allah had admonished him. So, when 29 days had passed, the Prophet first entered upon Aisha. Aisha said to him, "O Allah's apostle, you had sworn that you would not enter upon us for 1 month, but now only 29 days have passed, for I have been counting them one by one." The Prophet said, "The present month is of 29 days." Aisha added, "Then Allah revealed the verses of the option." 2, and out of all his wives he asked me first, and I chose him. Then he gave option to his other wives and they said what Aisha had said. 1. The Prophet had decided to abstain from eating a certain kind of food because of a certain event, so Allah blamed him for doing so. Some of his wives were the cause of him taking that decision. Therefore he deserted them for 1 month. See Quran 66.4.